A day at Wonder World. The sonic assault slammed into Emily as she disembarked the shuttle. Peals of manic glee fought for dominance against the insistent pulse of arcade music. Popcorn's buttery aroma mingled with spun sugar sweetness, creating an atmosphere buzzing with collective enthusiasm. Wonder World. Usually, Emily found such manufactured joy irritating, yet today, she almost embraced the sensory deluge. Almost. Instincts honed by years in the ER, however, flagged potential dangers. The sheer mass of bodies, children darting like sparrows, the treacherous lip of the entrance fountains, all spelled possible trauma. Her fingers tightened on her backpack strap, a reflex born of habitually keeping vital medical gear within reach, even off-duty. Emily edged into the human river, her gaze sweeping for a park map. She needed to orient herself, pinpoint the first aid stations, and, crucially, discover a haven of quiet. The park exploded with vibrant hues. Coasters clawed at the sky like metallic dragons, carriages crammed with exhilarated screams that a colossal Ferris wheel turned with languid grace. Displaying a panorama of carefully sculpted grounds, vendors hawked everything from enormous stuffed animals to personalized trinkets along the main concourse. Last, she found a map, its slick surface already blurred with fingerprints. Colossus, she murmured, tracing its path. A knot of dread tightened in her stomach at the sight of the monstrous network of inversions, plunges, and near-vertical drops. Shaking it off, she sought out more tranquil options. The botanical gardens beckoned, or perhaps the dolphin show. Anything to avoid an unwanted rush of adrenaline. Across the sprawling grounds, near the Colossus's gaping maw, Jake vibrated with pent-up energy, practically levitating with excitement. "Dude, we are actually here," he shouted over the mechanical roar of the approaching train, its wheels squealing against the steel. His friend, Marco, just gave him a look. "Chill, Jake, it's just a ride." Yet even Marco's voice betrayed a thrill. He adjusted his cap and flashed a grin at Sarah, who gnawed nervously at her lip. "I don't know," Sarah confessed, her voice frail. "It looks intense is an understatement. Intense is the entire point," Jake hooped, slinging an arm around her. "Come on, live a little. No chickening out now. This is what we've talked about all summer." He jabbed a finger at the looming structure. "That drop. It's like diving into oblivion." He began an exaggerated pantomime of falling, limbs flailing, face a mask of comical terror. Marco played along, and soon Sarah was giggling. Her apprehension temporarily banished, they joined the line, which twisted through a series of themed tunnels crafted to build the suspense. Murky passageways echoed with digitized roars and the ominous clicks and whirs of machinery. Bolstered by adrenaline, Jake launched into grisly tales of coaster calamities, much to Sarah's mounting distress. "Jake, stop," she pleaded, swatting his arm. "You're going to jinx us, I know it." "Easy, Sarah," Marco reassured. "He's just winding you up." As they edged toward the loading platform, the air thrummed with a strange charge. The riders' screams intensified, their faces a volatile cocktail of elation and stark fear. Eyes blazing, Jake started filming the plummeting coaster, capturing its brutal power and speed in a shaky, amateur video. Meanwhile, Emily had settled on a bench beside a small pond, hoping the serene setting would calm her jangled nerves. Darning needles skipped over the water, and the gentle susurrus of leaves offered a welcome counterpoint to the park's relentless din. Closing her eyes, she concentrated on her breath, trying to shut out the ghosts of the the memory of Mrs. Henderson's shallow gasps, the insistent bleeding of the monitors, the sharp, clinical tang of antiseptic. Too vivid, too close, her eyes snapped open. She couldn't shake it off that IT was an integral part of her, woven into her very being. The burden of responsibility, the ever-present awareness of potential catastrophe, always lurking just beneath the surface. A piercing cry cut through the background noise, followed by a chorus of screams unlike those emanating from the coaster. These were edged with raw, unadulterated panic. Emily's head shot up, senses firing on all cylinders. She scanned the multitude, seeking the source of the disruption. Something was wrong, deeply, terribly wrong. Sudden collapse. Jake's guffaws, a booming cascade of sound, momentarily eclipsed the screams and delighted cries rising from the Colossus. He just ribbed Emily about her obsessive planning, playfully mocking the color-coded itinerary for their park visit. Laughter still echoed in his throat when his face twisted into a mask of agony. He grabbed his chest, knuckles bone-white against the worn cotton of his band tee. "Whoa, you all right, man?" Ben asked, reaching to steady him. Jake remained mute. His eyes dilated, reflecting a sudden, raw terror that iced Emily's veins. He staggered, then collapsed like a marionette severed from its strings. A wave of collective breath swept through the throng. Exuberance died into stunned quiet, pierced only by Ben's frantic cries of "Jake, wake up!" Murmurs began to ripple through the crowd, faces registering disbelief. Some edged away, as though tragedy were communicable. Others remained rooted, eyes fixed, melting ice cream cones and forgotten trinkets clutched in their hands. Emily's training surged to the fore. The color leached from Jake's features, his breathing shallow and ragged. This wasn't mere lightheadedness. This was infinitely more grave, cardiac arrest, unmistakable. "Clear a path! Everyone move!" she barked, her voice honed by practice, slicing through the rising tide of confused voices. She shouldered past a gaggle of selfie-snapping teens, ignoring their indignant squawks. The combined sense of sweet popcorn and acrid exhaust fumes assaulted her, a stark contrast to the sterile tang of disinfectant she associated with crisis. Reaching Jake, she knelt beside him. Ben was shaking him, tears carving paths through the grime on his face. "Jake, please, don't do this. He's unresponsive," Emily stated, her voice even despite the frantic drumbeat in her chest. "Ben, call 911. Tell them we have a 17-year-old male, unresponsive, suspected cardiac arrest, location Colossus entrance. Be specific with directions." Ben scrambled for his phone, his trembling fingers nearly losing their grip. Emily ignored him, centering her attention on Jake. His skin felt slick and cold, his lips tinged a disturbing blue. She swiftly assessed for a pulse, finding nothing but absence. A wave of nausea threatened to swamp her. This wasn't simulation. This was brutally, terrifyingly real. That a life was ebbing away before her, and she seemed to be the only one present with a clue what to do. She wrestled open her backpack, its meticulously arranged contents suddenly seeming bulky and insufficient. Where was the ED? Her fingers snagged on zippers, the precisely labeled pouches feeling like a cruel taunt. Finally, her fingers closed around the cool plastic of the automated external defibrillator, her hands unsteady as she extracted it. "Give us space," she yelled, pushing back the gawkers who had begun to converge, their faces a grotesque mixture of morbid fascination and apprehension. "He needs air." She swiftly adhered the ED pads to Jake's bare chest, her actions efficient despite the tremor in her limbs. The machine hummed to life, its synthetic voice cutting through the air. Analyzing heart rhythm. "Stand clear." Emily inhaled deeply, attempting to shut out the low hum of the crowd, the distant screams from the churning roller coaster, the crushing weight of responsibility. She had to remain calm. She had to maintain focus. This kid's existence hung in the balance. The AED discharged. Jake's body arched violently. Emily stilled, searching for any sign of renewal. The machine whirred once more. Analyzing heart rhythm. Shock advised. Stand clear. Another shock. Another convulsion. Still, nothing. Panic threatened to engulf her. It wasn't succeeding. She knew the bleak statistics. Survival chances dwindled with each lost second. But surrender wasn't an option. Not now. "Begin compressions," the ED commanded. Emily positioned her hands on Jake's chest, lacing her fingers together. She drew in another deep breath and initiated the compressions, pushing down hard and fast, internally counting to the beat of the Bee Gees' "Stayin' Alive." The incongruous rhythm a bizarre counterpoint to the proximity of death. She pressed, counted, pressed, counted, her muscles screaming in protest. The sharp taste of sweat stung her eyes. Time warped and distorted. The world, narrowing to the cadence of her compressions, the whirring of the ED, and the horrified faces encircling them. The enormity of Jake's life, the magnitude of everyone's expectations, settled upon her shoulders, a suffocating burden, She had to persevere. She had to, the go bag. Jake's gaze had become distant, his complexion draining of all color. Emily pressed searching fingers against the cool, slick skin of his wrist, then his neck at an unnerving void. Her stomach lurched, cardiac arrest. "Call 911 now," she commanded, the urgency in her tones slicing through the air. The joyous cacophony of the amusement park seemed to distort, the delighted screams and peals of laughter fading into a dull, indistinct murmur. This couldn't be real. Not here, of all places. Not now. She shoved aside the small backpack she habitually carried, usually overflowing with maps and bottled water. Today, it was different, a carefully curated emergency kit. The zipper yielded with a smooth whisper, a small oasis of normalcy in the mounting chaos. Inside, each item nestled precisely in its labeled, transparent pouch. Years spent navigating the controlled pandemonium of the ER had cultivated an ingrained need for order, a reflex that extended even to her leisure time. She snatched the largest pouch, the words, CPR/first aid, emblazoned in bold lettering. A pocket mask gleamed within, its clear, plastic reflecting the park's artificial light. She extracted it, the cool, sterile material reassuring against her palm. Next, antiseptic wipes. The foil tore with a sharp rip, releasing a brief, astringent scent that momentarily overrode the saccharine perfume of spun sugar and buttered popcorn. She swiftly cleansed Jake's mouth and nostrils, carefully positioning the mask over his face, ensuring an airtight seal. Her hands moved with ingrained precision. She retrieved disposable gloves, the thin latex snapping audibly as she pulled them on. The sound magnified in her ears. She located the small shears in a side pocket, deftly slicing open Jake's t-shirt to expose his chest. "Is there a doctor? A nurse? Anyone with medical training?" she called out, her gaze sweeping the gathering onlookers. Most simply stared, their faces etched with a morbid fascination. Some filmed with their phones. A wave of revulsion washed over her. "I need help with compressions? Did someone call for help?" she pressed, her voice rising. A young man, barely out of adolescence, raised a tentative hand. I took a CPR class in high school," he stammered, his eyes wide with apprehension. "Okay," Emily responded, projecting a composure she was far from feeling. "You're gonna do chest compressions. Right here in the center between the nipples. Push firmly, push quickly. About 2 inches deep. I'll count." She placed her hands on Jake's breastbone, demonstrating the correct technique. "Like this? Watch me for 1 cycle, and then you take over. And someone, please, find park security. They should have a defibrillator." She initiated compressions, counting aloud. 1, 2, 3, 4. Her muscles screamed with the exertion, the rhythmic pressure a stark counterpoint to the festive atmosphere. She could feel the boy's gaze fixed on her, absorbing her every move. After 30 compressions, she pinched Jake's nose, sealed her lips over the mask, and delivered 2 breaths. His chest barely moved, nothing. No change. "Okay, your turn," she instructed the boy, stepping back. "Remember what I showed you? Hard and fast. Keep going until the paramedics are here." He nodded, his face ashen but resolute. He took over the compressions, his movements initially shaky but rapidly gaining confidence. A fresh surge of adrenaline coursed through Emily. This wasn't enough. They needed more intervention. She rummaged in her go-bag, extracting a small blood pressure cuff and stethoscope. She had to detect any flicker of cardiac activity, any faint indication of life. Her hands trembled almost imperceptibly as she secured the cuff around Jake's arm. She positioned the stethoscope over his brachial artery, straining to catch any sound, any signal at all. Silence, utter silence. She squeezed her eyes shut for an instant, fighting off a wave of despair that threatened to engulf her. This couldn't be happening. She refused to let it. She had to continue. "Keep going," she urged the boy, her voice roughened with strain. "Don't stop the compressions. Race against time." A ghastly blue was creeping across Jake's face. Emily tore at his shirt, brushing aside the teenage girl's stammered apologies. 911, carousel, cardiac arrest. Tell them it's urgent, and someone, an AD. There has to be one. Her voice, usually a quiet murmur, fractured with raw fear. She hammered the heel of her hand against his breastbone. Recalling the training, the pressure needed .30 compressions. Her muscles screamed in protest almost immediately, but she fought the burn. 2 breaths. The air felt thick, stagnant, offering no life. .30 more. A sheen of perspiration slicked her forehead, the salty droplets stinging her eyes. She risked a peek at Jake. The cyanosis deepened and no response. Asterisk breathe. Damn it, breathe. Asterisk. Her mind chanted, a frantic, insistent rhythm. Self-doubt, the constant companion of stress, nipped at her resolve. Was she doing enough? Too much? Each tick of the clock stretched into an unbearable eternity, each pump of her arms a testament to potential failure. A man in a lemon-yellow polo, likely park staff, materialized, his face ashen. I called. They're coming. Someone said AD? Yes. Where? Emily rasped, her lungs raw with exertion. He was fading. She could feel it in her bones. Maintenance shed. Behind the restrooms, near the entrance. I'll grab it. He spun and bolted, disappearing into the sea of faces that had gathered. A macabre audience to the drama unfolding. Emily continued, her movements losing precision. The faces swam before her eyes of the girl, streaked with tears. The tourists, their mouths agape. The murmurs, a disquieting undercurrent. She shut it all out, narrowing her focus to the subtle rise and fall of Jake's chest. However faint, she couldn't yield, not now. Will he be all right? The girl whimpered, her voice barely audible. Emily, eyes locked on Jake, replied, I don't know, pray. A meager offering, even to her own ears. At long last. The employee reappeared, winded, a vibrant orange case clutched in his hands. Got it. I got it. He wrestled with the clasps, finally popping it open. Emily pressed on without missing a beat. Plug it in, pads. He fought with the unfamiliar device, his hands trembling like leaves in a storm. Right. Okay. Where do these go? Her instructions came out clipped, edged with desperation. Right chest, below the collarbone. Left side, under the arm. He tore open the packets and slapped the pads onto Jake's chest. His placement hurried and imperfect. Emily watched, pleading silently for the machine to work, to spark life back into Jake. He fumbled with the connector. Nothing. The screen remained dark. It's not turning on, he stammered, his voice cracking with dismay. Emily's stomach plummeted. The battery. Check the battery. He scrabbled at the compartment, his fingers clumsy with panic. He yanked it out, staring at it as if it were an alien artifact. It's dead. The battery's dead. A collective intake of breath swept through the onlookers. Nausea clawed at Emily's throat. Useless. A vital instrument, rendered inert by sheer neglect. She squeezed her eyes shut for a split second, battling the rising tide of despair. This couldn't be happening, not like this. Damn it all! She roared, the sound cutting through the stunned silence. Listen up, someone. Back to the shed. Another 80. This one's useless. Move. Go now. Without pause, she threw herself back into the compressions, her motions now fueled by adrenaline and raw, burning rage. Time was the enemy. Each second a betrayal. She had to hold on, until help came. Even if it broke her, skepticism and doubt. The shrill of the security whistle cut through the rising panic like a knife. Emily winced, turning to see a stocky officer with a salt and pepper mustache trotting towards her, his hands still gripping the whistle. All right, what's going on here? He barked, his voice amplified by the surrounding concrete. Emily rose to meet him, her hands raised placatingly. Officer, this young man is in cardiac arrest. I'm a nurse, and I need space to work. The officer stopped a few feet away, his eyes narrowing. Nurse. Huh. Let me see some identification. Emily felt a surge of frustration. Every second counted. Officer, with all due respect, I don't have time for this. He needs immediate medical attention. I'm trying to stabilize him until the paramedics arrive. She gestured towards the unconscious teenager, his face now an alarming shade of blue. Procedure is procedure. The officer countered. His voice firm, he crossed his arms over his chest, his gaze unwavering. I need to verify your credentials before I can let you continue. There are protocols for a reason. Protocols. Emily's voice rose despite her best efforts to remain calm. This isn't a paper cut, officer. This is a life or death situation. Do you have any medical training? Can you help? He shifted uncomfortably, his gaze flicking momentarily towards the prone figure. I'm trained in basic first aid, he mumbled. But that's not the point. I need to see your ID. Emily gritted her teeth. She knew arguing was wasting precious time, but the officer's obstinacy was infuriating. Fine, she snapped, reaching into her backpack with trembling fingers. She rummaged through the medical supplies, finally extracting her wallet. She flipped it open, displaying her nursing license. Here. Now can we please focus on saving this young man's life? The officer squinted at the license, taking his time to examine it. Emily could practically feel the life slipping away from the teenager. The air crackled with tension, thick with the murmur of the increasingly anxious crowd. The smells of cotton candy and popcorn were overpowered by the metallic tang of fear. Finally, the officer nodded slowly, handing back the license. All right, Nurse Carter. But I'm still gonna need a statement later. He surveyed the scene, his eyes taking in the chaotic circle of onlookers. All right, people, move back. Give her some room to work. His voice, though gruff, had a degree of authority. The crowd, spurred by his presence and the urgency in his tone, began to reluctantly shuffle back, creating a slightly larger perimeter. Emily didn't waste another second. She returned to the teenager, her mind focused solely on his labored breathing. She double-checked the oxygen mask, adjusting the flow, but he wasn't responding. Officer, she called out, her voice strained. I need you to keep this area clear. And no one gets through unless they're medical personnel. And call the paramedics again. Tell them it's critical. Officer Miller hesitated, his eyes darting between Emily and the crowd. He seemed unsure of himself, the weight of responsibility suddenly heavy on his shoulders. Right? He muttered. Pulling out his radio, he fumbled with the controls, his face reddening slightly. Dispatch, this is Miller. Repeat, we need paramedics at the Galaxy Zone. Immediate. We have a possible cardiac arrest. Yeah, a nurse is on scene, but just get them here ASAP. He paused, listening intently. Copy that. He clipped the radio back onto his belt. His gaze still fixed on the crowd, he cleared his throat. All right, folks, you heard the lady. Back up. Nothing to see here. Just a little medical emergency. His voice lacked conviction, but the crowd seemed to respond to the uniform more than the words. Emily ignored him, her attention laser-focused on the young man. She felt for a pulse, finding only a faint, erratic flutter. She knew time was running out, even with the oxygen. His condition was deteriorating rapidly. She glanced up at Officer Miller, who was now awkwardly attempting to direct the flow of people. His initial skepticism seemingly replaced with a nervous apprehension. He was still unsure, still doubting, but at least he was trying. That was something she supposed. It just might not be enough. Moral dilemma. Emily leaned into Jake's chest, palms interlocked, forcing the rhythm. 1, 2, 3. Perspiration trickled down her temples, blurring her vision. Each compression was a calculated gamble, a desperate attempt to jumpstart a failing system, knowing the potential for collateral damage. The alternative, the stillness creeping across his face, the ashen hue, was a void she refused to contemplate. A lecture from nursing school echoed in her mind. Dr. Ramirez, all brusque mannerisms and compassionate gaze, showcasing an X-ray of fractured ribs. CPR is brutal, he declared, his voice booming through the auditorium. You will likely break something. Internal injury is a risk, but remember why you're doing it. They are circling the drain. You're buying them a ticket, not guaranteeing perfection. Buying time, that's all she could do. For Jake, vibrant moments ago as he'd regaled his friends with stories of roller coaster rides. Now, a silent, unresponsive weight beneath her hands. 30 compressions. She pinched his nostrils, covered his mouth with hers, and blew. The sharp tang of sterile air, courtesy of her makeshift mask, filled her senses. She registered the slight resistance, the almost imperceptible yielding of his ribcage. A phantom memory flickered. Mr. Hemmings, gasping for air in the his face a roadmap of pain. She'd followed every guideline, adhered to every protocol. Yet, his ribs had splintered under her pressure, and he'd coughed scarlet before fading. His daughter's accusatory glare remained seared in her memory. Doubt. An insidious serpent, coiled within her. Was she too forceful? Was she inflicting more harm than good? The ambient noise of the gathering crowd swelled, their collective anxiety an invisible blanket smothering her resolve. She flicked her gaze towards Mark. His face a canvas of worry, poised to act. His hand hovered near the backpack crammed with her emergency gear. Epinephrine, she commanded, her voice strained. And the AED. Now. Mark scrambled, his movements frantic and clumsy. Each tick of the clock felt like an eternity. She pressed on with the compressions, her muscles screaming in protest, her thoughts a runaway train. Another ghost surfaced. A teenage girl, victim of an overdose, her heart a stubborn rebel, despite repeated shocks, despite the arsenal of medications. Nothing. The attending physician, his face haggard with defeat, had finally pronounced the time of death. The crushing weight of that failure, the ensuing silence, had been a leaden shroud. She could not relive that agony. Not with Jake. Not today. She pushed deeper, locking into the rhythm, willing his chest to rise and fall. She had to trust that her actions held meaning, that her efforts were not in vain. The fear lingered, the nagging uncertainty, but beneath it surged a potent force, a fierce, unshakable will. Mark finally unearthed the epinephrine auto-injector. He fumbled with the packaging, his hands trembling. Where do I? Mid-thigh, the side. Emily maintained the compressions. She registered the wavering in Mark's eyes, the terror of making a mistake. Just do it, she urged, her voice tight with urgency. We're losing him. Mark thrust the injector into Jake's thigh. Emily continued the compressions, pleading, hoping, commanding Jake's heart to respond. She was a guardian, a sentinel against death. She had a covenant, a sacred pledge. Even at the risk of injury, even facing the repercussions later, she would not yield. She would not surrender. Jake's life hung in the balance. The paramedics arrive. The ambulance siren, a distant promise moments ago, crescendoed into a piercing wail that ripped through the frenzied whispers and morbidly curious gasps. Yet, the sound did little to cleave the throng. Bodies remained pressed tight. Necks craned skyward, phones brandished like shimmering, impotent talismans. Move! Please, paramedics! Emily's voice, hoarse and frayed, barely registered. She redoubled her efforts, each chest compression a desperate prayer. Sweat blurring her vision. Jake's pallor was alarming. His stillness terrifying. Officer Miller, his face a mask of concern, shouldered his way forward, hands extended in a plea. The crowd, however, remained an obstinate, breathing wall. All right, folks, that's enough. Back it up. This isn't entertainment. He swept his flashlight in an arc, the beam a weak probe through the human mass. Progress agonizingly slowed at last. Two paramedics, a man and a woman in navy jumpsuits, squeezed through the final few onlookers. The woman, her expression etched with focused intensity, clutched a fully stocked medical kit. Her partner wrestled a portable defibrillator. Where? She barked, her voice clipped and professional. Here, Emily managed, her voice thin against the din. Teenager, male, collapsed about 10 minutes ago. No pulse. No breathing. CPR in progress. The paramedics dropped to their knees beside Jake. Sarah, with swift precision, tore open his shirt. Mark was already securing the defibrillator pads to his chest. V-fib, Mark stated, his eyes flicking to the monitor. Charging. His gaze met Emily's. Stand clear. Emily recoiled, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. She held her breath, watching as Mark discharged the electric current. Jake's body jolted violently. The monitor emitted a discordant beep. Still in V-fib. Recharging. Mark's tone was terse. Emily, right? Nurse, you said? Emily nodded, her throat constricted. Emily Carter. Yes. Anything? Allergies? Medications? Sarah's fingers danced over Jake's arm, searching for a vein. No medic alert. Nothing in his pockets. Just this. Emily offered the crumpled theme park map. He was gripping it tightly. Sarah acknowledged the information with a nod. She swabbed the crook of Jake's arm and inserted in 4. Epinephrine, 1 milligram. For push. She injected the drug, her movements economical and precise. Officer Miller loomed, a blend of worry and suspicion flickering across his face. He studied Emily with a probing stare, as if attempting to reconcile her heroic actions with a potential infraction. All right, people, give them some room to breathe, he commanded, carving out a slightly larger sphere around them. Mark rechecked Jake's pulse. Still nothing. 10 minutes, you said. Compressions the entire time. Yes, Emily confirmed, her muscles screaming in protest. Non-stop. Mark exchanged a look with Sarah. Good work. You bought him valuable time. He prepared the defibrillator again. Charging. Clear. Another surge, another convulsion. This time, the monitor displayed a nascent rhythm. Sinus tachycardia, Mark announced, a note of relief coloring his voice. We have a pulse. Faint, but present. He began ventilating Jake with a bag valve mask, forcing air into his lungs. Sarah attached a nasal cannula. Oxygen saturation's low. We need to expedite transport. Prep for movement. Exhaustion threatened to engulf Emily, but a rush of adrenaline sustained her. He was alive. He was really alive. Yet, she knew the battle had just begun. Which hospital? She asked. City General, Mark responded, already relaying instructions to his partner. Trauma team alerted. We'll give them a full rundown en route. Officer Miller approached, his stern expression softening ever so slightly. Okay, let's clear a path. We need to get the gurney through. He directed the onlookers, his voice now commanding, less abrasive. This time, the crowd yielded more willingly, perhaps realizing the severity of the situation, or simply sated with morbid curiosity as the paramedics carefully lifted Jake onto the gurney. Emily retrieved her discarded backpack. Guilt pricked at her as she realized she hadn't even spared a thought for her belongings until now. Thank you, she said to Mark, her voice trembling, for the fast response. Mark offered a terse nod. You did well, Nurse Carter. You kept him viable until we could intervene. He paused, casting a glance toward Officer Miller. We'll need a statement from you later regarding what you witnessed. Emily nodded, her body beginning to tremble as the adrenaline waned. She watched as the paramedics wheeled Jake away, the rhythmic pulse of the heart monitor a fragile counterpoint to the theme park's throbbing cacophony. Aftermath. The paramedics shoved the gurney into the ambulance with a jarring thud. Emily, perched precariously on the edge, gripped Jake's hand, her knuckles white. His face, still pale and clammy, was now obscured by an oxygen mask. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was the only sound cutting through the chaos. BP's stabilizing. The paramedic shouted to his partner, as he expertly threaded in 4-line into Jake's arm. Let's move, people. We're losing time. Officer Miller, face etched with a mixture of relief and lingering disbelief, leaned into the ambulance doorway. I'll follow you to St. Jude's. And, Miss Carter. He cleared his throat, the crackle of his radio momentarily drowning out his voice. Someone will need a statement. Later, of course. Emily barely registered his words. Her entire focus was on the rise and fall of Jake's chest. However shallow, as the ambulance doors slammed shut, the sirens screamed to life, cleaving a path through the throng of bewildered parkgoers. She didn't look back at Wonder World. The hospital waiting room was a sterile purgatory of flickering fluorescent lights and hushed whispers. Hours bled into each other. Emily paced, replaying the scene in her mind, each moment magnified, each decision scrutinized. Had she done enough? Could she have done more? The metallic tang of adrenaline still clung to the back of her throat. Her phone buzzed incessantly. The first few calls, she ignored. Then came the texts. Friends, family, even acquaintances she hadn't spoken to in years. all variations on the same theme. Have you seen the news? Are you the nurse from Wonderworld? You're a hero. Finally, she answered that it was a number she didn't recognize. Emily Carter. A brisk, professional voice. This is Sarah Chun from Channel 7 News. We're running a story about the incident at Wonderworld today. We'd love to get your perspective. Emily hesitated. I don't know that I just want to know if Jake is going to be okay. Of course, Chun said smoothly. But your story is incredibly inspiring that it's going viral. People need to hear it. We can be there in 30 minutes. Before Emily could formulate a response, another call came through. This time, the caller ID read Wonderworld PR. She sighed and swiped to answer. Ms. Carter, this is David Miller from Wonderworld. We want to express our deepest gratitude for your quick thinking and bravery. You saved a young man's life. We'd like to offer you let's just say we'd like to discuss some opportunities with you. The vague, corporate tone grated on her nerves. Opportunities? Yes? Media appearances, of course. To potential partnership. We believe your story aligns perfectly with Wonderworld's values. Courage, hope, and... He trailed off, seemingly searching for the right buzzwords. Right now, I'm only concerned about Jake. Emily interrupted, her voice sharp. I'll consider your offer. Later. She hung up, feeling a wave of exhaustion wash over her. Meanwhile, back at Wonderworld, Officer Miller stared at his phone. His Facebook feed was flooded with grainy videos and shaky photos. Emily Carter, the nurse with the backpack, was everywhere. The hashtags exploded. Hashtag Wonderworld hero, hashtag nurse saves teen, hashtag Emily Carter. Even his niece, a social media devotee, had shared a post with the caption, "A real-life superhero? Auntie Dale, did you see this happen?" He scrolled through the comments, a mix of awe and disbelief. Someone had even started a petition to award Emily the Medal of Freedom. He scoffed, Medal of Freedom? It all felt surreal. He was used to dealing with petty theft, lost children, and the occasional drunken tourist. Not viral sensations and potential national heroes. He found himself replaying the scene in his mind. The controlled chaos. The focused intensity in Emily's eyes. The way she'd calmly taken charge, defying protocol, ignoring the onlookers, simply doing what needed to be done. He had stood there, frozen, a bystander in his own park, that he felt a strange mix of admiration and... Was it jealousy? He picked up his radio. Dispatch, this is Officer Miller. I need to file a supplemental report. Regarding the incident earlier today. The one with the nurse. He paused, searching for the right words. She deserves some recognition. He signed off, feeling a flicker of something he hadn't felt in years. A sense of purpose beyond the routine. Maybe, just maybe, he thought heroism wasn't just for the movies. A second chance. The antiseptic scent of the hospital clung to Emily as she navigated the linoleum hallways. The fluorescent lights hummed, a stark contrast to the vibrant chaos of the theme park she'd left behind. She clutched a small bouquet of sunflowers, their bright yellow faces a silent offering of hope. Room 312 at Jake's room. She took a deep breath and pushed the door open. Jake was propped up in bed, his face still pale but his eyes bright and alert. A monitor beeped steadily beside him. A comforting rhythm. He grinned when he saw her. Emily. You came. Of course, I came, she said, her voice catching slightly. She placed the sunflowers on the bedside table, their cheerful color instantly brightening the sterile room. How are you feeling? Like I went 10 rounds with a roller coaster. He joked, wincing as he shifted in bed. But seriously, much better. The doctor said I'm incredibly lucky. Emily sat down in the chair beside his bed, her gaze fixed on him. You are? And you're strong. She hesitated, then added, I saw the cardiologist this morning. He said you're responding well to the treatment, and with cardiac rehab, you should make a full recovery. He also said if it wasn't for the immediate CPR, you wouldn't be here. Jake reached out and gently squeezed her hand. Thank you, Emily. For everything. I don't even remember collapsing. Just darkness. Then waking up here. You gave everyone quite a scare. She gripped his hand in return. Especially your mom. She hasn't left your side. She's a worrier, but I'm glad she's here. He paused, his expression becoming serious. I owe you my life, Emily, that I really do. Emily shook her head. Don't say that, Jake, that I just did what anyone would do, that I'm a nurse. It's what I'm trained for. But you were off duty, and you didn't have all the usual equipment. You saw what was happening and reacted. That takes courage. Emily's cheeks flushed. CPR is a skill anyone can learn. That IT should be taught in schools. Everywhere. You never know when you might need it. They talked for another hour, about the park, about Jake's plans for the summer, about his dreams of becoming a programmer. He was a bright, funny kid, full of life. The thought of losing him still sent a chill down her spine. As she was leaving, Jake said, Emily, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you become a nurse? She thought for a moment, gazing out the window at the city skyline. I think it's about making a difference. About being there for people when they need it most. About offering comfort and hope in the face of fear and uncertainty. The following week, Emily found herself standing on a small stage, bathed in the warm glow of television lights. The theme park was hosting a press conference, ostensibly to reassure visitors about safety, but also, undeniably, to capitalize on the positive publicity. She was acutely aware of the cameras focused on her, the reporters scribbling furiously in their notebooks. A large banner behind her proclaimed, Hero Nurse Saves Teen's Life. The park manager, a portly man with a slicked-back haircut, droned on about the park's commitment to safety and its appreciation for Emily's exceptional bravery. Then, he presented her with a framed certificate and a check for a substantial sum. Emily accepted the award with a polite smile, but when she stepped up to the microphone, her voice was firm and clear. Thank you, she said. I'm honored to receive this recognition. But the real reward is knowing that Jake is recovering. I want to emphasize that what I did was not extraordinary. CPR is a simple, life-saving skill that anyone can learn. I urge everyone here, and everyone watching, to take a CPR course. You could be the one to save a life. She then announced that she was donating the check to the local chapter of the American Heart Association, earmarked for CPR training programs in schools and community centers. A ripple of applause spread through the crowd. Later that evening, Emily sat alone in her apartment, the framed certificate leaning against the wall. The news was full of her story, hailed as a hero, an angel. But she didn't feel like a hero. She just felt grateful. Grateful that she had been there, grateful that she had known what to do, grateful that Jake was alive. She picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found Jake's mother's number. She hesitated for a moment, then pressed the call button. Hello? A tired but relieved voice answered. Hi, this is Emily Carter. I was just checking in to see how Jake is doing. Oh, Emily, thank you for calling. He's doing remarkably well. He even managed to beat me at a game of cards this afternoon. Emily smiled. That's wonderful to hear. He keeps asking about you. He wants to know when he can thank you properly. Tell him there's no need. Just knowing he's getting better is thanks enough. She knew, deep down, that this experience had changed her. It had reaffirmed her commitment to nursing, her belief in the power of human connection. And it had given her something else. A sense of purpose, a renewed dedication to educating others about the importance of CPR. It was a second chance. Not just for Jake, but for her too. A chance to make a difference, one life at a time.